At school, some of us know that class bully who makes our lives difficult. But for some of us, that bully can be certain people in our family. Due to having my own issues, I can empathise with the frustration people feel in this situation. Therefore, I wanted to do my part in expressing some important ideas that might help give you the tools to deal with this if in a similar situation. Hi everyone, my name is Peter. I'm a physiotherapy student within the UK, and today we'll be talking about a book called CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker, and also some of my own experiences as well. I just want to make it clear from the get-go though, that before I start the video, I am not a trained psychologist, psychotherapist, therapist, whatever. I have been taught psychological principles from my university degree, and I have also done my own research around psychology as well, but I am just a dude who liked this book, thought it was useful for my life, and it might be useful for other people watching this video. With that out the way, let's get into the video. So firstly, who is the book for? Why should you even read it? Or why should you even listen to me in the first place? I feel like the book is good for three different kinds of people. It's good for someone who has had issues with their family and feels like it causes a reduction in their quality of life, and it causes them to feel angry, sad, any kind of negative emotion. Or if you are someone who doesn't have issues with your family per se, you have a healthy relationship with your family, they uplift you, they support you, they nurture you, but you know, like a close friend, for example, that has issues with his or her family, then the knowledge from this book can be really useful for giving them advice and helping them in their situation, or even pointing them in the right direction to maybe read this book or similar books. Or if you're someone who has kind of worked on issues that you've had with your family in the past, you're a little bit older, but you don't want the issues you've experienced with your family to affect your parenting with your kids or your future relationships as you get older with girlfriends, boyfriends, friends, whatever. And the reason I say this is because even if you feel like you're not anxious, for example, on a day-to-day basis or angry at a lot of things, you'll be surprised how profound the effect certain events in your childhood can affect you as a grown-up. And for me personally, when I read this book, I was like, wow, this is affecting me in ways I didn't even think were possible. So therefore, just the awareness from the book in itself is really useful, I think. Next, why am I talking about the book? So personally for me, I feel like this has really improved my mental health, and it's really improved the mental health of my own mum, who has also read this book as well. Furthermore, outside issues with family, there are issues with friends, job, work, whatever, that also make you stressed, and the tools and techniques and things of awareness that this book teaches you is good for just dealing with stress in general. And for me, I'm a very anxious person, so this book really helped me. Secondly, this book has given me better advice for helping friends and family who have their own issues with family. Now, that has also come from my own experiences, but the book has most definitely helped as well. If you're young, as a third point, you're going to be spending a lot of time with your family. So just in general, the knowledge in this book about building relationships and having boundaries and how to deal with stress, these are just fundamental principles in general that are just really useful in day-to-day life. Anyway, without further ado, there is like a 3-step process that I thought of to kind of structure the information from this book, but also from my own experiences as well. The first step is realization and education. And the reason I say this is because most people don't realize what is going on, what issues in their family makes them sad, makes them anxious, makes them stressed, makes them upset. And also, even if they realize, a lot of people are in denial for various reasons about issues with their family, and they will have this inner critic that I will get onto later, that for example, they will think it's their problem, like they're to blame for how their mum or dad treats them, and that's, an unhealthy way of thinking. Also, realize that you can educate yourself on these things. If you have issues with people in your family, you can educate yourself to be a better communicator and to be more aware and how to deal with stress and to not let the bad habits of other people in your family kind of drip feed onto you. As the book is titled, CPTSD, Basically, PTSD, as most people know, post-traumatic stress disorder, and CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm not an expert on this, so read the book if you want more details, but essentially complex PTSD is formed over a longer period of time, usually in your earlier years. Apparently, according to Pete Walker, it's a little bit harder to treat, and also secondly, it has been misdiagnosed for loads of different things, such as ADHD and depression, when actually these things are rooted in events that happened in your earlier years as a child or even as a teenager. One of the most important over-encompassing principles from the book is called the 4 Fs. So Pete Walker refers to this as fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And essentially, when people are dealing with trauma, they will have defense mechanisms. But these 4 Fs, whilst a normal, healthy person would use an equal amount of these, someone who has PTSD would usually really depend on one of these 4 Fs. So again, if you want more detail, read the book. But someone who is more fight is a bit more narcissistic, a bit more sociopathic. They're very confrontational. They blame everything or almost everything on the partner or friend, and they feel like they can essentially never do wrong, and they're instantly very confrontational with other people and can be a bit intimidating. The second one is flight, and this is someone who always has to be busy. They're perpetually busy. They always show the best part of themselves, and they always have to show people that they're always doing something amazing, they're always doing something good, and they're always really busy. And they will use day-to-day tasks to kind of stick their head in the sand and distract themselves from issues that they should probably focus on. The third one is freeze. Now this is someone who really just distracts themselves, and they might be a bit of an airhead. They might disassociate from their emotions. So essentially they just like an ostrich, they stick their head in the sand, they go to their room, they isolate, they watch YouTube, they watch Netflix, they do online shopping, they play video games. They're actually a lot more likely to use psychedelics and narcotics. And essentially it's to kind of be in a happy land and just ignore all the issues around you. So instead of dealing with the pain, you just kind of numb yourself. And this is someone who is also very uncomfortable with connection with other people and prefers online dating as well. The fourth one is called fawn, and this is someone who is more emotionally tactile. They are called emotional chameleons, and essentially they have learned to get along with toxic family members by knowing their wants and desires before even their family member knows how they want it. So, for example, if you know that a certain family member likes talking about a certain topic, you will automatically talk about that topic with them even if you don't want to, because it means you're kind of mitigating stress and them being angry. However, because you're so in tune with other people and what they're thinking and what they want, that means you find it really hard to express your own self-identity, and you find it really hard to express how you feel, how you want, and it's really hard to kind of set your boundaries, and you're essentially a bit of a people pleaser. For me personally, I would say I am 70% fawn, 30% flight or something like that. I feel like I have to be busy quite a lot, doing a lot of stuff, and also I feel like mostly I get really anxious with confrontation with people, and if people are disapproving of me, and I have to be very quick to try and make them happy, and I feel like their happiness is on me to try and solve. And this has had my own issues with relationships in the past, but it's something I've definitely worked on. But again, if I hadn't have read this book, I would not be aware of what trauma type, I guess they could say, is suitable for me, and I wouldn't know what things to work on. The next thing is, if you're someone like me who's quite prone to anxiety, it's knowing the difference between cognitive and somatic anxiety and the usual signs and symptoms that you would usually feel. Before I read this book, I already knew about these from my degree, because somatic and cognitive anxiety are just basic fundamental principles within psychology in general. But essentially, cognitive anxiety is very much in your head. It's like what you are thinking, what do you worry about. It's like, oh, I'm stressing that I've left the oven on or something like that, or I'm stressing about what they think of me. Somatic anxiety is more physiological, so it's more you're sweating, your heart rate's going crazy, your hands are clammy, it's that kind of stuff. So usually there are certain techniques that, from what I've read in the scientific literature, and I'm happy to reference this if anyone asks in the comments, there are certain techniques which helps with more cognitive and more somatic forms of anxiety. But essentially, cognitive and somatic effects of anxiety are both caused by the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. I won't go into that too much because I won't bore you with biology and science and whatever. But essentially, knowing whether you lean more towards somatic and cognitive, and specifically what signs and symptoms you have, can make it a bit easier to focus on what things you need to deal with in relation to anxiety. The next one is knowing the difference between the inner critic and the outer critic. The inner critic is kind of like the self-loathing and self-hate that you have for yourself. Early in the video, I mentioned the fact that you might try and justify the mistreatment that your family gives you because you're worthless, you deserve that, it's because you're not perfect enough. When actually, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be treated with respect. And if someone mistreats you, you have your boundaries and you can say, no, that's not right. And that's something I've really had to work on as I've gotten older. My inner critic is a lot stronger than my outer critic. So therefore, moving on, the outer critic. This is your justification for your actions. This is how you think of the world. So if you are mean to someone, you can say, well, they're mean to me, so therefore I can stoop to their level and be mean to them. The outer critic makes it a lot harder to form trust with other people because you're just thinking, like you're very cynical. You're like, are they going to screw me over? Are they going to be mean to me? And again, these inner and outer critics, they are defense mechanisms similar to the F-types for dealing with stress. But the whole point of this video and the whole point of this book is to be aware of how you deal with stress and how to have healthier strategies for dealing with that. So, for example, with my anxiety and that my kryptonite is how people are disapproving of me, a little mantra I say to myself is, a little bit of disapproval is okay with me. And that's a quote that I got from the book. But for you, if you have other things that you find difficult, then having your own little mantra and your own little techniques might help you. The next step is preparation and action. So once you are aware of these tools and how you can fix, or I don't say fix, but help your situation, and you're aware of the issues that you might have and that you might want to work on, don't be an ostrich. Don't stick your head in the sand. Try and do something about it. Especially as an adult, it is on you to try and help your situation. Like, yes, I'm not saying that, happiness is fully a choice, because there are some things that make you really upset, but to a certain extent, you can do things to help your situation. And as an adult, it's your responsibility to self-parent yourself, find out what things have affected you from the past and how to work on those. What I will say is, as an extra point, I found meditation to be amazing for me personally, and I will cover a separate video about the benefits of meditation and how it's helped me personally. However, preparation and action, this stage is going to be shorter than the rest of the stages, and that's for a good reason. That's because if you have any issues, pause this video, go away and speak to a professional. Speak to a therapist, speak to a psychologist, and if you don't find someone who's good straight away, find someone else. The whole point of this video is, it's not the Lord's gospel, it's not for you to follow step by step, it's just to kind of make you aware of what things might be an issue for you and to work on them, and to potentially speak to someone else. Again, who is a professional. The next step in this process that I have kind of termed is compassion and understanding. This is kind of towards the end of your journey, not that your journey ever ends. But if you are not at the stage, that's absolutely fine. Some people spend years or never get to the stage, but as long as they're improving, that's the important thing. But what I find is, over time, especially through meditation and self-awareness and working on a lot of these techniques, you look at your problem more from the point of stoicism. And instead of just thinking about what was done to you, you start understanding what factors led that person to make that decision. and in some ways even having compassion for them. They might have been mistreated by their parents. They might have had bullied at school. Whatever the thing is, you have a lot more compassion and sympathy for that person, and instead of fighting them, you learn how to work with them. Yes, it's a lot easier to say this from my point of view because I've got my own apartment, I've had my own space from certain people in my family, and I've been able to work on this. But I feel like this stage is something that a lot of people should strive towards because it gives you inner peace and happiness. And again, that is something that I feel like everyone deserves. Lastly, I just want to mention that the process of recovering from issues with your family and how they treat you and improving yourself, the journey never ends. It is a constant process. You are a process, not a thing. There are days where you might fall back and you might think, what's the point? And there are days you might excel forward and make loads of improvements. But understand that every day, trying to improve 1%, that's something that I really believe in, and just try and work on what you can. But know that there is never going to be an end. There is just improvement, hopefully, over the long term. I believe in life that everyone should be happy. I am a bit of a pacifist in nature, and I try my best to mitigate suffering where possible. Instead of lashing out, try to understand. Instead of wishing bad luck on someone, try to comprehend the factors that led them to make that decision. Whether it was their parenting, their DNA, or the fact that they were having a bad day. Fostering healthy relationships is one of the most important things that we can do in our lives. Ultimately, many of these concepts from this book, I believe, could help you with your journey to forming more healthy relationships. Just to kind of conclude, I want to end the video roughly by paraphrasing someone called Naval Ravikant, who is one of my online mentors. And what he says is along the lines of, you are born into this world and then you have loads of sensory information. Colours, light, sounds, etc. How you choose to interpret that is up to you. And this is very controversial because it's kind of like on the lines of happiness is a choice, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because it's very controversial. But what I'm going to say is that there are most definitely things you can do. Your effort to improving your life and improving these issues with your family or even friends is not futile. Some people go through their whole lives without realizing the detrimental effects that their family and friends have had on them. Part of being a lifelong learner that I really believe in is knowing how to self-parent as well. By the end of the book, it mentions a silver lining, which I quite appreciate. And it kind of goes along the lines of, if you are towards the end of your journey, but remember there's never an end, but if you have made a lot of progress in your journey, then the amount of skills you will develop in mindfulness, awareness, compassion, empathy, stuff like that, are amazing tools for just day-to-day life, for emotional intelligence and helping other people. So if you improve yourself in your journey and make strides to deal with those issues, you will be hopefully an amazing person on the other side. I hope these tips help you in the long term, and I definitely encourage people to read this book. It's good stuff. If you want to know how I fell in love with reading, then I will link that at the top of the video. Make sure to check out that video. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you there. Adios, amigos.